Hello, everyone. I am Matt Williamson. How's it going today? It's going great here. I am recording this on Tuesday. It's a player day off. I'm in my dorm room, as you can tell, as it echoes. Not much more of that, though. This is going to be my last night in Latrobe. It's been a great stay, but there's nothing today Steeler-centric. There's no practice. So I wanted to dip into the mailbag with you guys, and man, we got a tidal wave of good questions. So I'm not sure, I definitely won't get all of them today, but I might carry some over for later in the week or whatever. But let's dig right in. Dennis Lavelle 6909 writes, all right, Matt, here's a long question. All right, Matt, here's my question for tomorrow's mailbag. How much of a role do you feel synergy plays in the evaluation of an offensive line? And how much better can a player, especially a rookie, but not limited to rookies, be when paired next to a more proven talent? Cases in point. Even though Siamalu played fairly well last season, it had to be tough playing with arguably the best center in the game in Philly and coming here and playing with arguably the worst center in the game. In contrast, should we expect even more from the vet playing next to Broderick instead of the worst left tackle in the league, and Frazier, who should be a significant upgrade even as a rookie to what Cole provided last season? And back to rookies, though Frazier looked good in his debut, do you feel like his play will ascend more significantly when he gets to play between Siamalu and Daniels? And even though it was long, I thought that was an excellent question and conversation that very much applies to the Steelers. And last things first, I 100% think it will benefit Frazier a great deal playing next to those two guards. Both of them, of course, but especially Siamalu. Siamalu is considered one of the brightest offensive linemen in the league, and just so happens he played with Kelsey, who's maybe the brightest offensive lineman in the league, football intelligence. Now, I 1,000% feel like continuity, synergy, as you said, plays a massive role in offensive line play. Like, I had dinner with Craig Wolfley last night, and he's telling stories about how him and Tunch would just kind of grunt at each other because they played together so long. Those Steeler lines with Pouncey, DeCastro, Villanueva, Ramon, all those guys had amazing continuity year after year, were pretty durable. That stuff is huge, and it's going to be a challenge for the Steelers this year. And there's no doubt about that. I think it's a huge point of emphasis. I think it's a huge thing to talk about. Even like down at the goal line, and I'm making a little bit of excuses for them, when they couldn't punch it in 3 tries, there was some slight timing and communication stuff, if you really study the tape, between guys that probably wouldn't have been the case if they all played together a lot. Now, I think big picture, you have the capabilities here of really creating great young synergy for years and years, continuity, familiarity. But in the meantime, especially with this Fuatano injury, I don't think the 5 where you want them is going to happen until he comes back, because I think you want Jones on the left and the Rook on the right. That being said, I do think if you can get Frazier into the lineup, that's a good start. But rookie centers have a really tough time from this, perspective. And I do think getting those 2 guards back in regularly will help. But there's some shuffling going on. And part of it's because they have a lot of depth on the O-line. I definitely think it's a heck of a lot easier to play next to Kelsey than it is Cole. That's without question. Or in between Moore and Cole, for that matter. Or with rookies, I'm sure the Siamalus and Daniels of the world don't love playing with rookies. At any position, there's growing pains, but the offensive line spot is such a repetition, timing, technique position, in addition to all the physicality and mauling and all those things. And particularly, a big thing that they're leaning towards more now with all the outside zone concepts. That's a 5 dancing bears all synchronized swimming as one. And that just takes a lot of time, a lot of reps, a lot of familiarity. I think they have a good offensive line coach, but and I've said this all along, I really have high hopes for this line for the next decade, for the next 5 years. However, I think the beginning of the season, fortunately, that part of the schedule doesn't mean quite as much, nor is it as challenging. I think we'll have a lot more miscues and timing problems and things like that than hopefully the second half of the season when you play all those AFC North teams. But as always, injuries could complicate that. That's starting to get in the mix right now. If you don't know, the Steelers have been remarkably fortunate, lucky, whatever, in terms of offensive line injuries the past couple of years. Doesn't mean they're due, but they haven't had to do a lot of shuffling. Now, I do think they have a lot of really good options, but the shuffling stuff doesn't thrill me. So this is a really good question. It's something to pay a lot of attention to, both in protection and the run game. Even like the trap stuff that they did last year so well. That takes a ton of time to get the timing right and let that defensive tackle come upfield almost untouched and then blast them from another way. Because if you miss it, it gets ugly quick. So I think also things get exemplified by the goal line, tighter quarters, everything happens quicker. So that's a challenge for Pat Meyer and this whole offense is get these guys all playing together as soon as possible and as well as possible. But great question. Without question. BetOnline's number one source for all your summer sports this season, from MLB, golf, and so many more. All the latest stats, news, and scores available to follow your favorite teams. Get the latest odds and lines, including the latest team matchups, player props, and odds on just about every sport out there. Head to the website today or use your mobile device to get in on the action. BetOnline, where the game starts. We had so many good questions. I definitely won't get to them, but I have a bunch more here. Tom Tucker asks, do you think that Connor Hayward is a luxury that the Steelers can't afford to really have? And I think that's an interesting way of looking at it. And I don't think Tom's even asking if his last name was Williamson or Jones or whatever. Would he be a Steeler? It's not a brotherly thing. I don't think that's what he means by that. But I don't think he's a luxury that they can't afford to have at all. I think he's fills in a lot of gaps. So we've had a lot of special teams conversations over the last couple of weeks. And their core special teamers are getting shuffled. Well, Connor's one of them, and he's really good at it. So that in itself has great value. I mean, besides Matakevich and Killebrew, Hayward might be the most valuable core special teamer. I'm not talking about returners and specialists, kickers. I'm talking about guys who play on punt coverage, kick coverage. So that in itself has great value. I don't know if a true fullback is going to make this team or not. I lean towards yes, because they've used him a lot, but Hayward can do some of those things. He can carry the football. I think he's a really good route runner. I think he's a really good fit as a movement blocker in this Smith scheme, often from a motioning position or shifting before the lines, before the ball snapped. And he couldn't be any more different than Washington, even though they both walk into the tight end room. But I think that's something this coordinator will use to his advantage. So example is, if a defense decides when the Steelers play 12 personnel, one back, two tight ends, two receivers. With Washington, they're going to play their base defense. Well, what if we take Washington out of the game and we put Hayward in? If they stay in their base, well, then I think the Steelers will then throw. You know what I mean? So I think he's a very important piece. I don't know that his numbers will be massive in this offense, but I think the fact that he can do a lot of things and do a lot of things well makes him kind of the opposite of a luxury, and that he is needed to fill in a lot of gaps, especially when some injuries settle in throughout the year too. Bruce asks, all camp, we have seen great catches and plays by our receivers and a drop in defensive wow plays in the secondary, at least to this Twitter feed fan. And I think you're fair on that, by the way. I thought it was our wideout stepping up, but after this Texans game, I'm worried now. I know Minka didn't play, but am I crazy? No, I don't think you're crazy. First off, more so than other years, this coordinator is scheming up his wide receivers to get open, and it's really apparent when there's no pass rush or hitting, and it's 7-on-7 and skeleton drills and stuff like that. And he's also scheming them up to catch the ball in stride and make plays with their feet with the ball in their hands, much more so than Canada did. So that's all good. I'm not sure that I'm willing to say, boy, the wideouts are stepping up. I still have my concerns there. But Austin, Jefferson, obviously Pickens, Miller to some degree, have been good. I mean, they've been good. But I am growing more and more concerned with who's the third corner. Is the slot corner good enough? We talked about it on yesterday's show. Is KZ someone that really deserves to be out there every snap? No concerns about Minka and Porter, but I was having a fun conversation at the local watering hole here last night about how everyone, rightfully so, is terrified if George Pickens gets hurt. That would be really hard for this team to overcome. But I think right behind him in a very similar vein is, what if Porter gets hurt? Oh, man. And I like Jackson, but who's that third corner? And I think that might be something you kind of keep an eye out. I mean, Rush and Trice are interesting, but are they trustworthy? I mean, I want those guys to be my fourth outside corner. Sutton fills all those gaps really well, kind of like we just talked about with Connor Hayward. However, he's not around, so that doesn't get you real far. So, yeah, I'm growing more and more concerned with the corner position, and the safeties not named Minka to me are fine, not great. You know what I mean? Tommy Nelson asks, who is replacing Rob King on the postgame show? Well, as I have for like the last 10 years, I am doing all three, and I did one in the bank of radio postgame shows. Feel free to call in. But Mike Pursuta is now doing it full-time as well as a pregame show. I appear in a pregame show as well. So Mike and I did the Texans postgame, and frankly, got a lot of really, really good responses about it. And he will do them from here on out. So you're in good hands. Pursuta is one of my absolute favorite people in this business. He's a friend, and he's really good at his job. So you are in very, very good hands with that. So if that wasn't public knowledge, well, I think that's definitely public knowledge. But if you guys weren't aware, that's how that's getting set up. All right. I might have to double up mailbags tomorrow because there's a lot of good stuff here. My man Naz has a bunch of questions, so I might have to do a Naz-only podcast. What a question asker this guy is. But I got to run for now. I have some other nuggets I'm working on as well. I will be at the joint practice on Thursday, and I'll be at the game against the Bills, as well as I just mentioned, I'll be hosting that post-game show for like 2 hours after Tomlin's press conference. So give me a buzz. Feel free to comment, spread the word, follow me on YouTube, all that good stuff too. So take care. Over now.